Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni moli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedlie, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. Thank you so very much for joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Randel McGee. He is here to celebrate Zhang Heng in the Incredible Earthquake Detector. Hey, Randel, how are you?
I'm doing well, Jedlie. Thank you. It's nice to be with you.
It's really great to be with you, too. Randel's book is being published by our friends at Familius Publishing. I always give a shout-out to Kate and the folks at Familius. They have been such great friends of the show. And right from the start of the show, right now we have lots of publishing houses that are friends and send authors our way. But it was Familius was there right from the start. So we just love those folks over at Familius.
Oh, they're great. I've really enjoyed working with them.
Yeah.
Great group.
So tell us about this great book.
Yes, it's Zhang Heng was a real person, lived in China about 2,000 years ago. So this is based on a true story about a device he created that was able to detect where an earthquake struck and which direction it came from, so that they could then send help as quickly as possible to that area to, help rebuild and help survivors and all that.
Wow, what an incredibly important device to have, especially at that time. We're talking, right. This is before, forget about before the internet and Zoom. It's before
yeah.
it's before telephones and telegraphs. It might even be before smoke signals. The idea.
Yeah, it would have been Pony Express type of communications for sure.
Yeah.
And so Zhang Heng actually lived, and he did create this device. And the story is about his process. I have added some artistic license in adding a dream that he has where he sees how the device could work and then tries to interpret that into the machine. All the while he's in the royal court, and there's some political interplay where people want to have him removed from the court. They don't like him. He's always getting praised by the emperor. And so there's a little bit of intrigue, a little bit of conflict with the whole story.
Yeah.
But in the end, he perseveres.
Awesome.
And
I'm imagining as we're reading this, and this would be a great book to read as a family or co-read. The first question a kid might have is, if he's doing something good for people, why would anybody object to it? And that question can be transported to today.
I was going to say, yes, that's the age-old question. If it's really good, why is there opposition to it? And that's a good thing to discuss as a family. Another thing that I wanted to add about the book is that since it isn't a story from ancient China, and I am a professional puppeteer, I decided to illustrate the book looking like a traditional Chinese shadow puppet theater production.
Ooh.
So all of the figures were cut out, colored and cut so that they would look like shadow puppets, and it was photographed against a lighted screen, a lit screen, so that you see the colors of the characters coming through. the characters are all jointed, just like a shadow puppet from China would be, so that I could use the same characters and reposition them in each scene for what was needed.
Wow, what an ingenious and unique idea. Where was the inspiration for that?
For the shadow puppetry?
Yeah.
Or the...
To use it in the book.
I just thought, I haven't seen a lot of books illustrated in that style. And so, and for me, it was basically a shortcut. I didn't have to draw the same character in different poses. I just had to have it was like a little action figure that I could then reposition for some of the different scenes. Just like in Chinese shadow theater too, some of the faces were interchangeable.
Wow!
So that I could have a happy face in one picture, and then maybe a sad face in the next picture. So that was the inspiration for using the Chinese shadow puppet.
Wow! That's fantastic. Tell us about this detector. Because we're talking, there was no motherboards and circuits and transistors and everything. I'm having a hard time envisioning even just using the word machine to talk about 2,000 years ago.
Right. Well, Zhang Heng was a brilliant inventor. He was an artist. He was a poet. He was an astronomer and was an inventor. And he worked on several machines. Yet we don't think of 2,000 years ago as being very advanced. But he created an odometer, a machine to measure the distance that a cart had traveled. He also refined some of the other things that would measure planetary movements. And so he, using levers and rods, he was able to figure out a way to make a machine that had 8 different points on it, and when an earthquake came from the northwest, a ball would drop on the northwest side of this invention into a bucket, and then people would know, it came from the northwest. Let's go up there and see what we can do. I've been to Taiwan many times, and I have seen a working model of the earthquake detector in the museum there.
Wow.
So in fact, I had started working on the book when I was invited back to Taiwan, and I made a point to go to the museum, take several pictures from several angles, take pictures of the inner workings of the machine that they had there at the museum. And those are all included in the book.
Wow, fascinating.
Some of those inner workings, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. China is such, and of course right now there's a lot of political goings on, but China is such a fascinating country and has such a fascinating history. The people are wonderful. The people are very different than the government. We have a number of Chinese students who came here, live with us, become part of our family, and we love them dearly.
That's great.
As you were mentioning, this technology that happened 2,000 years ago, I had a very kind of eye-opening moment as I was walking one of the students through the city and just kind of showing her around and how to get to her college. We were walking by one spot in Boston. I said, and that building there, it's over 300 years old. And she was not impressed at all.
I'm sure she wasn't. No, having been over there and been in Europe, it's like 300 years. Oh, that was just kind of yesterday in this neighborhood. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey,
sure.
I wanted to talk a little bit about, we have lots of authors on the show, and it's awesome to speak to them. I don't have a lot of people who've been making a living doing what I do, which is to go and present school shows in schools, and it is such a unique profession. So I just love meeting people who do what I do or do what I did before the pandemic went and ruined everything.
Okay.
So talk about that. How did you get into doing puppetry and other kind of shows in schools?
I started in college. I was attracted to a children's theater troupe at the university I attended, Brigham Young University, which is here in Utah, and started working with them. They had a puppetry troupe, and so I started working with them. I could do a lot of funny things with my voice, and as it turned out, I fell in love with the assistant director of the children's theater troupe, and we married, and it's been one circus since then. She's been my director and my editor. We were trying to start a puppetry troupe of our own after I left college, and I had this idea for a dragon puppet that could talk and would look like he's close to me, but I had a fake arm around him. So anyway, I came home and my wife had started making this dragon puppet, and we called it Grork. And I developed a ventriloquist act with Grork that I then was able to tour through schools. I worked with an assembly agency for about 4 years before I started out on my own. And Randel McGee and Grork have toured all around the United States and many of the countries of Asia. And so doing schools, libraries, special events, those kinds of things, mostly family-oriented programs. And like you, Grork and I do shows that are based on character education themes. And we were lucky enough to produce a video series called Getting Along with Grork that is sold in schools, for character education and counselors to use. And a follow-up series was called Popcorn Park, The 6 Pillars of Character, which features Grork, but doesn't feature me, unfortunately. I'm not the facilitator mentor in that series. But,
Hey,
still, they're both great series.
Yeah, one of the things that I played around with puppets, but I don't really have a lot of experience. But one of the things that I've heard from people who are puppeteers is that a lot of times, when you were mentioning that, you're not behind a screen, Grork is on your arm, and so the kids are seeing you interacting with your character. I've been told that lots of times people will address the puppet directly in talking and kind of forget that this is a puppet and it's not a real live thing.
Right. Oh, that happens quite frequently, yes, with me and with Grork. He's very lively. He's more like a Muppet-style puppet, so there's a lot of movement in his head and his body. I do have eyes that blink and move from side to side, so he's very lifelike in that respect. And most of the time, people ignore me and will talk to Grork and forget that I'm there. However, when I would be practicing it with my children at home, there would be times when they would look at Grork and say, "I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to Dad." So, there were always those kind of funny moments too. But puppets, we suspend our sense of reality when we're working with puppets or looking at them many times.
I've heard from people that that a lot of puppeteers are basically very shy people, and they're able to express themselves better through their puppets. That's something that you experienced, especially early on?
I've know that idea. I've heard that. I've always been a rather outgoing person myself. Maybe a little quiet in large group settings, but if I'm on stage, of course, that's a different subject. But Rourke is able to express things and say things that wouldn't be considered appropriate for an adult of my age and position to say. And yet, if it were a child or a puppet saying it, then it's not only appropriate, but it's funny. So, yeah, there is that to be said. I've studied lots of different kinds of puppetry, but the career with Rourke is what has, been my mainstay, my bread and butter, as you'd say. But I have researched like shadow puppetry and different kinds of puppetry all around the world in my travels. So when it came time to do the illustrations for this book, I thought, I just have to do it with shadow puppets.
One of the things you mentioned that you've studied puppetry and how it happens all around the world. One of the things that really was fascinating to me when I started my career on stage, I was a clown and morphed into a clown who did some magic and then ended up morphing into a magician who kind of acts like a clown on stage. But I was really pleasantly surprised when I performed outside of the United States, when I was performing in Puerto Rico, and discovered that there and in many other parts of the world, clowning was considered an art form, as opposed to here where it's here it's like some person puts on some makeup and does a birthday party. And that's not what I do. And it was so different to be looked at as an artist. I remember I did a pratfall and got a whole lot of laughs. And then when I stood up, people applauded. And I thought, that's really weird. Is that something that you experience as a puppeteer?
Yes, of course. Like you said, puppetry is generally relegated to a simple birthday party entertainment or something like that, and that's fine. There are a lot of good puppeteers doing birthday party shows and doing good work. I mean, they're representing the art form well. But most people in Europe, puppetry is considered an art form. In many circles, I mean, there's still that kind of stigma that I found over in Europe. But because there are so many generational puppet theaters back there, where they've been doing it father to son to daughter, for years, and they have established theaters where people pay good money to come and see Mozart's Magic Flute, done with marionettes, or traditional shows. In Taiwan, I stumbled across several puppet shows at different times that were done in front of the temples there in honor of the gods, and they were very elaborate, with elaborate sets and beautiful puppets and smoke effects and all kinds of things. That were very artistic, So, like any sort of art, you can do anything from finger painting to, a Mona Lisa, and it's all considered the art. Yeah. So, puppetry can be anything from a little finger puppet, that you play with your grandkids, or it can be a full stage production. So,
Now, I know we have lots of authors who listen to the show, and lots of authors especially new authors, are out there and they're thinking, I'm going to do school visits. And I'm going to be paid a lot of money because my time is valuable and I have something great to give to the kids in school. And then they show up and it's like, I'm going to read my book. And that's okay. But it's not quite what a school is looking for. If you were to advise, if there was a young author here who wanted to do those school visits and do, 100 a year, and they were putting together their presentation, what advice would you give them? What should they be thinking as they're putting this together?
That's a great question, because I have seen school assemblies done by authors that have some funny books, but they just didn't know how to work the audience. They didn't know how to control the ebb and flow of a performance. So I would suggest that they do some public speaking training or theater. In particular, if they want to do school performances, they should look into some children's theater studies. How do you present to a young audience, whether you're performing for elementary age, which of course is one specific kind of audience, or junior high and high school, which are worlds apart from the first one. You have to know your audience, and you have to know how to reach them, how to keep it moving, keep it light, keep it fun. There can be some really good serious moments, but you have to know how to apply that to your audience. You can't do. I also perform as Hans Christian Andersen, the famous storyteller, and some of his stories were tragic. The Little Mermaid does not end up marrying the prince and living happily ever after like the Disney movie would have us believe. And so you have to be able to couch those tragic or poignant moments in a way that won't overwhelm the children, won't traumatize them. I remember one lady, a lady who, when I told her the real ending of The Little Mermaid, she goes, "You're kidding." I don't want to be a spoiler, but she dies. And I go, yeah, that's the story he wrote. But so yeah, if you're wanting to do performances, get to know your audiences, get to know the buzzwords for both the kids and the teachers. What's kind of common in their daily lingo, their lives. And a lot of this, as you know, comes from experience.
Right.
You have to go to a show where somebody is kind of acting up and learn how to deal with that positively. Where there may be some disruption, or you're in the middle of a very important part and the school bell rings, or
the voice of God comes down to let everybody know that lunch will be delayed 10 minutes.
Because the guy in the auditorium is going too long. Right, yeah. Oh, I've actually had, kids kind of get up out of my shows to go to lunch. And it's like, nobody told me this was going to happen.
Exactly.
But, and you do have to learn how to be flexible and still learn how to be professional at the same time.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. And I love the advice, and it's the same advice that I give young magicians. Young magician will come up to me and say, and they already have forgotten more magic than I'll ever know in my life. And they'll say, what do I need to do? You've been making a living doing this for 30 years. What do I need to do next? And I will tell them, go take a dance class. I'm a magician. I'm not a dancer. Yeah, but you got to move. Right now, you're stand still. You look like a statue. You have to be able to move on stage, and a great way to learn how to do that is dance, because it will help you walk better, or take a
right. You look good as you're floating across the stage.
Exactly. Yes. Take an acting class, and people don't realize that, and that you're creating theater, whether you are doing magic, puppetry, or going in to share your beautiful children's book. You are creating theater, and it is more than sitting down and reading off the pages of a book.
Exactly so. And unless you're really good at dramatic voices and reading a book is just, deadly on stage.
Yeah. Well, you have to think you're talking about sitting down and reading a book in front of kids who spend their day consuming media that changes every 3 seconds. They're
Right.
looking at things that are flashing, that have sound effects and all this layers and layers and layers of stimulation. And now you want them to sit in an auditorium and just look at you reading your monotone voice, and that just doesn't work.
And you know, and if you want to do school shows, adding media is a way to enhance it. And I'm not necessarily an animated movie or something like that, but just if you can have on a screen behind you pictures from the book, and as you're telling the story or explaining. One author I saw, author illustrator that I thought was really good. She demonstrated how she made the pictures, and another author illustrator would do cartoons as he was talking to the kids and say, okay, here's how I do this. You just draw a couple eyes, and now what does it look like? And, oh, if I add these kind of ears, what does it look like? And, oh, now I'm going to add these kind of legs. What does that look like now? And so it involves the audience. And I know dozens of kids after seeing that show went back to their rooms and were drawing eyes and, doing cartoons and stuff like that.
Awesome.
You want to engage the audience beyond what you're talking about right then or what you're doing. You want them to go back and maybe look something up or try something that you've tried.
Right. Absolutely. Hey, Randel, this has been great. This is great advice. The book sounds amazing. Can you tell everybody where they can learn more about you and learn more about Zhang Heng in the Incredible Earthquake Detector?
Yes, thank you. I have my own website. It's McGeeProductions.com. That's my name, McGeeProductions.com, where I post things. I'm also on Facebook as Randel McGee. People can follow me there. Familius has their own website, familius.com, with a catalog of all their books. They have a wonderful assortment of picture books and nonfiction books for parents on a variety of helpful subjects. So McGeeProductions.com, Familius.com, I think that would be a good place to start.
Those would be great places. We've had a great time speaking to the author-illustrator of Zhang Heng and the Incredible Earthquake Detector. Our guest has been Randel McGee. Hey, Randel, thanks so much for being with us.
Hey, it's been my pleasure, kind of reliving my old touring days with you, too, and so sharing some of those mutual experiences. I know we could probably talk for hours about
Absolutely.
the happies and the horrors.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Tim J. Myers. Tim's returning to the show to celebrate Full of Empty. Hey, if you're the author of a fantastic children's book, we would love to help you tell the world all about it. Being a guest on our show, it's fun, it's easy, it's absolutely free. You can learn more by going to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page. Scroll on down to be a guest. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, J. Randel McGee. Be sure to check out his website and all of his great books. Also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.